Hey there, this is Jim. Just a quick video on using the passive voice checker using Microsoft Word. We're going to be using Microsoft Word 2013, and I'm using the text from Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Here's just a quick example of the passive versus the active voice. In the first sentence, we're using the active voice, Dick sees Jane. Nice and simple. In the second sentence, it says the same thing, just in reverse order. Jane is seen by Dick. I've thrown a little coloring here to help us out. In the first sentence, the subject of the sentence is Dick. Dick is doing the seeing. The verb is sees, and the object, the thing being seen, is Jane in red. In the passive voice version of the same sentence, those things remain the same. Dick is still the object, but he's at the end of the sentence. So the verb has to go into passive mode, is seen, and then the object of the sentence, Jane, goes to the beginning. It's a much more complex sentence. It does say the same thing, but it tends to be harder to read and tends to muddle your thinking. Before I turn on passive voice checking, just take a look at the text that's on the screen. There are basically three grammar errors that are shown, starting sentences with buts and ands, and in the title there, something that shouldn't be grammar checked anyways. To turn on the passive voice checking, the hardest part is to find the options command. In old versions of Word, that will be under the tools menu. In Word 2013, which we're looking at, it's going to be under the file menu. And in the previous couple versions, that may be replaced by the office button. That's a round button sitting there. So I'm going to click on the file choice here. At the very bottom of that menu list, I'm going to find options somewhere. And that's going to bring up a whole screen full of choices. Again, on the older versions of Word, you may have to scroll very far down to find the grammar checking options. In the newer versions, find proofing. In the proofing options, couple things. If you want to check grammar as you type, that needs to be turned on right here. If you only want to check it when you do it manually, or also when you do it manually, make sure that check grammar with spelling is also checked off and turned on. To turn on checking of the passive voice, you need to find the advanced or settings button in that section. There is a whole list of choices here. I'm not going to go through these, and I'm not proclaiming to know what they all do, but the one you're looking for is passive sentences. Put the check mark in there. Click your OK button to close that window. Click your OK button to close the Word options. And now you will see a few more sets of blue lines on our sample text. I just want to remind you that spelling problems show up a little bit different from grammar. There's the word cripple spelled correctly. If I spell it incorrectly, it underlines it in red. Spelling errors are in red, grammar errors are in blue. If you're like me, you see a whole lot more grammar than spelling issues. I want to focus on the third paragraph of the speech. The second sentence is a beautiful sentence. I'm just going to separate it out here so that it's separate from the rest of the paragraph. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. Beautiful sentence, very descriptive, but it is written in the passive voice, hence the giant blue underlining. The subject of the sentence is the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. They are crippling. They're in yellow. The life of the Negro, the object of the sentence. So the object precedes the verb, and it's written in the passive voice. Rewriting that sentence, 100 years later, the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination still sadly cripple the life of the Negro. No blue underlining, written in the active voice and active verbs, just crippled, not instead of is crippled. It still contains all of Dr. King's descriptions. It says the same thing. It's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit clearer for the reader, and a little bit clearer for your thinking. Hope this has been helpful.